So you've just found a new client, whether it was this person was referred to you or whether you found them by yourself, like good old cold calling or however you got to them. And instead of being met with excitement, you're being met with suspicion. You're being met with guarded responses. Or even like you can see this person is here because on the one hand, they feel they have to be there, but they don't really want to be there. So they're a bit frustrated in that sense. And the simple reason you find out is because they've been burnt before and they don't trust you just by sheer, the fact that you're part of the profession. And how do we show them that we're different? And how do we help them see that so that they can see financial planning in a new light? That's what today's show is about. Welcome to Propulsion, the weekly show for financial planners and advisors who want to build better, more successful businesses. I'm your host, Francois du Toit, and every week we dive into the practical strategies that matter, from growing your client base and improving your services to developing yourself and your team. Whether you're running your own practice or you're part of a larger firm, you are guaranteed to find actionable insights to help your business thrive. So with that, welcome, and let's get into today's episode. I'm pretty sure that there's nobody that is listening to me this morning that has not been in a situation where you sat in front of a client and you were really excited to have a new client. Whether it was in your early days or even recently, I always laugh, but it is just one of those things where you get to meet this client and then you're ready for a great meeting. And then as you sort of go on screen or as they walk in the office or as you see them, you immediately pick up that this is going to go differently from what you envisioned probably. And there's quite a few reasons probably for that. And I think it's sometimes hard to distinguish between, what am I really dealing with in this particular situation? So there's a few things that I will share this morning with you. But basically what I'm talking about is you land up in front of a client, and this client you can see is not really, I would almost say, not wanting to be there. It is a client who you can see is very defensive. They're reluctant to share any kind of information with you. You've got to sort of drag everything out of it, or they just spill the beans and they just tell you how bad everything is and how little they trust anybody, and that they are just, I guess, thinking about that most financial advisors are not on the good side of the coin. They are in it for themselves. They're not in it for them. So there's many of these sort of things, and all of it boils down to what their experience has been in the past to a large degree, because those experiences informed what they believe about us, all right, or about most, or about all financial advisors or financial planners. And it's for us to understand what it is that they believe and what informed that belief, because the only way that you can change that belief is by offering them new information or a different experience to say, it's almost like you're having a bad meal at Spur, and now, okay, that's a bad example. Let's just say you go to like Bertelsmann, for example. It's got a whole series of restaurants, mainly in Stellenbosch, but also here in Somerset West, and I see he's opening one in Cape Town now. You might go to one of his restaurants and have a bad experience. Maybe the meal isn't up to scratch just because of something that happened on that day. But now, because of that, we believe that all these restaurants are bad just by sheer association, right? Because it's all his. Like, what does he now know about food? Don't worry about this. I absolutely love your stuff. But that's what happens to us as well. So there's one bad experience, or worse, if it happens to the parents or very close family of this person that we're meeting with, and now they are sitting in front of you for whatever reason, that's what they believe because they've seen it, they've experienced it, and therefore that's their reality. And I think, this is sort of, and where this all came from is I was standing around and listening to a group of people talking about, a group of financial advisors, excuse me, talking about this. And I sort of came up with thought, so there's this resentment that's there. And sort of just thought about to myself as I was standing there, listening to their response and how they're experiencing it and how they focus so much on how people just don't like us, And I thought to myself, like, that's not really, really true unless we tell ourselves that that's true, right? I mean, I can tell you of most of the people that I work, the far majority of people will not really have experiences like that or clients like that. It's very isolated where that would happen. But in most, clients do love us, they do trust us, but sometimes they don't. So what does financial advisor resentment then look like? There's this distrust, as I said earlier. There's defensiveness. There's this reluctance to share information, or a big reluctance to engage with you. Got to pull everything out of them. It's really, 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 really difficult. And this often happens in a new relationship. I think it's bad if something like this comes along in an existing relationship down the line. I mean, that should be showing us that there's other stuff wrong that we maybe need to consider. But this is specifically, I think, more prone to people that you don't know yet. And there's a few things that I want to talk about, just sort of starting off with. What is the cause of this? Like, what is the root of this resentment? And again, as I said earlier, the biggest thing is probably past experiences, because experiences, that's real. We saw it. Like seeing is believing. So is experiencing. And if that was your experience, then it must be true. So we can think about people who are really like product pushers. They were just selling. I mean, just think about the number of calls that we get on our little devices and how many of them we skip answering these days. Thank you, Truecaller. But it's one of those things where everybody's just trying to sell you something. So it's this focus on absolute selling. And then not only are people trying to push products onto our clients, they also give poor advice. In fact, sometimes they don't give any advice at all. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through. But also then they make all these elaborate promises, and then nothing happens afterwards. So they don't follow through. And because of these sort of maybe a chain of events, or sort of all of these things happening, this now builds up that resentment. No. So now they have this experience once. They still open to it and say, you know what, maybe it was just this one, get another one. And then they go, no, same experience. So now this must becoming a trend. The other big thing that I see where things go wrong, and I see it in my business as well, right? So there's people that think we're fantastic, and there's people who have a very different idea of who we are and what we do. And the main reason for that is just a mismatch of expectations. That is probably the biggest thing. On the other hand, also, we've got to be careful of not over-promising stuff that we simply can't deliver. This fake it till you make it thing is not something I believe in. Rather say, we've never done that before, but we're going to figure it out. Rather than say, yeah, no worries, we can do that and we will help you with this. That becomes a big problem. There was a stage in my journey where I tried to do that. So hence I can now say that does not work. And these days we don't do that anymore. But that's an important part, right? And then the other thing is when this distinction between feeling sold to instead of cared for. And there's a very clear distinction between these two. When we start thinking about, just think about yourself. Like when somebody deals with you, do you feel like this person gets me? This person cares about me. They really want the best for me. Or do you feel like all they wanted was just to sell this? I had a very recent experience. In fact, yesterday, where I'm not going to share the details, but I did say to my wife that, you know what, like it's interesting, like for years, nothing. And then suddenly, because there's something that people want. But anyway, so you see it happen. In South Africa specifically, I think there's also some other things that obviously play a role, something like regulatory confusion and things. There's all these different messages. And you also see, like these warning Wednesdays. Man, I know they're important, FSCA, but yes, like, can't we call it something else? Because warning Wednesdays, like, just look at, there's so much attention being put on it for a very good reason, because we want people to know, right? So we don't want them to make mistakes. But then, on the other hand, we're also shining this big spotlight on the fact that these 3 bad apples this week, it makes it seem like everybody's bad apples. I feel like, and maybe I'm just, I don't have enough self-confidence, but be that as it may. But those things are really important. Also, misrepresentation, and this isn't always intentional. Misrepresentation, if it's intentional, that's very, very bad. but also often we have misrepresentation in the fact that we don't know what we don't know. I recently received an email to check something, and I can see luckily the guy did ask for things to be checked, not directly with me, but with someone else. And they came to me to check. And you can see that there's this confusion between how things used to work and how they work now. And then like things are just all over the place. But if he didn't go out and check and say, look, I can't afford to make a mistake, please can somebody check this for me, which is best practice, I think, that would have caused him to misrepresent, right? And that, if you make a mistake like that, it costs people money. I mean, you don't really come back from those things. And then there is maybe a history of financial harm. Not just maybe. I mean, in South Africa specifically, you think about just recently the whole theater zone saga, and then what was it before that? And before that, there's always these big things, and it's not really serving us at all. Right? You get the picture. I'm waffling on. So let me move on. But that's why there's so much resentment and distrust in us as financial planning professionals. So what do you do when you do land up in front of a client? You know, it's great if you have a heads up that this is the situation. If there's a way that you can understand the person's past on a very high level, their experience before you even get to them so that you are prepared, that'll be great. I don't think that's really possible in many cases. Because I wouldn't necessarily ask somebody I don't know for a lot of information. I would want to get them in a room and have a conversation with them and find out what has their past experience been, how much they know, if they had good experiences, bad experiences, etc. But the things that we can look out for, and this is why it's so important. I just want to throw this in here because it's coming to me in the moment. But when we meet with people virtually like this, please make sure that everybody's got their cameras on. It is such an important part of the whole process. In any meeting that you have, this thing about, well, my camera doesn't work today, or, you know, maybe you're sitting in your car because you forgot about the meeting, or maybe whatever the case is, just don't do that. Put on the camera so that you can see the other person, that they can see you, because reading people's body language, facial expressions, and things like that is really the first port of call. When you need to look at it, it's the unspoken stuff that really gives you an indication that something is amiss. If my camera was off and I was just talking, I could be busy with other things even though I'm talking. You might be able not to see, like if I roll my eyes or if I go like, how long is this still going to take? You know, without saying it out loud, I'm just like. Whereas when the video's on, you can obviously pick up things like that, and in person it makes it so much easier. The first thing that we should not do, because I think it's in our nature to go, let me defend, right? We just go into defensive mode. So let me defend the industry. Let me defend the profession. Let me defend, you know, the product providers. Let me defend everybody that makes all of this possible. That's the last thing I mean, there's nothing that makes you as mad as if somebody goes against what you are feeling, because they're not acknowledging where you are at and what you're feeling. So that's what you really want to do. You want to acknowledge that person's frustration in that moment and go like, I can understand that. You know, and don't go like, I think the other thing we love to do is to go, that happened to me as well, so I really understand, you know, or because of that happened to my parents, that's why I became a financial planner. You know, it's sort of, that is the reason, but it's got nothing to do with us at the moment. This is just, the client needs some space to share their feelings, to be heard, to feel heard, and to feel like, oh, you're different because you're listening to what I'm saying. You're acknowledging what I'm saying. So all you want to do is just acknowledge the frustration and to show them that you understand. And you understand because it's about them. It's not about you or me. Also, I think what's very important is to say to them, look, we can't fix the past, right? We get this. We understand why this is such an important thing for you, why it must also be extremely difficult for you to be here today. But we can't fix the past. But what we can do is that we can build a future together. So that's really what we can do. And that sort of, I think, sets the tone. And all of this happens in that first 10, 15 minutes of a meeting. Because I think somebody can only go on for so long about their frustrations. But these are things that we really want to think about. Then if I can sort of share just with you some practical sort of changes that you can make, right? Just maybe 5 of them, just to sort of help you practically go through this. And again, I hope that you'll be making some notes about this. We will obviously be putting out a LinkedIn newsletter about this episode today, but do sort of go and think about this. And some of you were already doing this. Maybe you're doing all of it. Maybe you're doing some of it. But here's some ideas of what you could do. The first thing is to shut up. To be very blunt today, shut up and listen. So you lead with listening. We're not there to impress anybody or to prove ourselves too quickly. I think this is one of those situations where action proves, words don't. It's not what we say, it's what we do that will prove that we are different. And again, it's not the time to sit there and contrast ourselves to the other. Yeah, but we do, and we do this, and we do that, and we also hate those people. We don't like them. We don't want them in the profession. That's not the conversation that we want to have. So we just want to listen and focus on what they are telling us. The second thing that you want to do throughout is to acknowledge their pain. But here's the caveat: without judgment, right? Now, funny enough, I think I mentioned this in a previous episode where Jordan Peterson, when he was interviewed by Stephen Barrett on the Diary of a CEO, he was also talking about, like, we as humans, we always we have to judge. It's like, is it is it flight or fight? That's always a judgment that we're making. And in this instance, you are going to be making that judgment in your head around, is there somebody that I want to work with, or is there somebody that I absolutely do not want to work with? And it takes a bit of conversation to get to that point to say, well, maybe we're not the best people to help you, because maybe you identify with how the previous people did it, and say, I better not take on this client. Or that because the way of you doing things, they're going to have a completely different experience, and you can see that they are open and they really want a different experience, and therefore you can go down that road. But what they shouldn't feel is that we condone them, basically. Condone is the right word. I don't think that's the right word. But we're just listening to them, and we understand their pain. And we're not going like, yeah, but come on, man, that was your fault, really, if you think about it. So that's not what we want. We can just say to them, that must have been incredibly frustrating. I mean, that line in itself is extremely powerful. And if you then just say, please tell me more, and you just sit there and you listen, that will make the world of difference. Then the third one is to clarify, don't pitch. You want to be extra clear about what you do, how you work, who you work with, and also what you don't do and who you don't work with. So all of those are really, really important. So you've got to be really, really clear about this. Because remember, one of the things we spoke about earlier was that expectations, a mismatch of expectations is a big issue. So if we don't make sure that we manage the expectations right from the get-go, you're going to find it very difficult with this client as well. And you're going to say, why did I even try? The fourth thing is to focus on small wins. So don't overwhelm them with planning strategy, and you're going to do all these things. We're going to do it so quickly. I mean, one of the things that comes to mind, because I think the thing that plays a massive, massive role, because once you've had this conversation, the next step that you go to is then onboarding. So your onboarding better be slick, and your onboarding better not be overwhelming. And this is sort of why I'm thinking about onboarding now, because if I say don't overwhelm someone with their planning strategy or with a planning strategy, it's too fast, too furious, too much, right? But then when we onboard, we send them an email with 10 attachments and say, please sign all of this and send it back to me as soon as possible. Oh, and by the way, can you also please send us your assets and liabilities and your income and expenses? Like, no, like that stuff does not work. We are in a world where things need to happen too fast, or we think that it needs to happen too fast. It doesn't. We need to purposefully slow things down in order to create a great experience, in order to have time to build trust. That's what it is about. Now, I understand that often, depending on the environment you find yourself in, there will be a lot more pressure to get things done by the end of the month. I completely get that. But over time, you should definitely, the way that you build your business should be in a way that enables you to slow down in the sense of taking longer to onboard clients, to have more meetings with clients, and to have conversations with them that really matter to them. That's really where it's at if you want to build a good and sustainable business, right? So let me just recap the 4 things so far. So lead with listening. That's one thing that you can do. Acknowledge their pain, but don't judge. So without judgment. clarify and don't pitch. So we want to clarify what we do, who we do it for, how we do it, but we're not selling anything to them. Okay, we're just explaining, we're just positioning. And then the fourth thing is to focus on small wins. So you want to do things slowly. You don't want to overwhelm yourself. You want to start with something that they can feel right away. So maybe, we just simplify paperwork, or we do things in plain language, or we break things down, or whatever that may be. And then the fifth thing is where everything is at. And we all know this, but I'm going to tell you something that and you're going to like, Francois, yes, I know. And this is sometimes where I fall short. Even we still do every now and then. But be consistent early on. And not only early on, it doesn't help you being consistent. And now people go like, okay, I made the right decision. And then 6 months down the line or a year down the line, it just goes back to the experience that they had before. But initially, that consistency, the communication, all of that stuff is so, so important. So you want to sort of build proof. They do what they say. They did what they said they were going to do. Oh, they did another thing they said they were going to do. Oh, they did another thing. And it just keeps on. And then there's trust that starts to build. And that's really what we want from that perspective. So if we do this, right, it's very simple, in my opinion. It's not a very difficult thing to do. Just focus on the other person. I remember I made a note about this in my book. How do you turn somebody from a skeptic into somebody who loves you or trusts you? Winning friends and influencing people. There's one rule that stands above them all, in my opinion. They all matter, but be interested and not interesting. So be interested in the other person, make it all about them, and everything else sort of falls into place. Now, that said, there are sometimes people that you absolutely do not want to work with. So what I would definitely do with a client like this, if they had one bad experience, that's one thing. If they had 2 bad experiences, and this is sort of informing their views, I can still work with that. But if they had 3 or 4 or 5 bad experiences, then I'm going to start asking, okay, who's the common denominator here? And am I going to be number 5 or number 6? And then I definitely don't want to get involved. Often we get the question about, how do I know whether I want to work with somebody or not? Unfortunately, that does come with time, because there's little red flags or little indicators along the way, along the conversation, that should jump out at you. But depending on where you are in your journey, you might decide to turn a blind eye to those and not consider them and say, oh, I'm going to take a chance. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm right. But in our guts, we know that that's not the right client for us. And then a year, 3, 4, 5 years down the line, it's there. And often, when people are unhappy, we take it so personally that it feels like we feel obligated to sort this out, because what are they going to go and tell other people about us? I've spoken a few times to one of our members that had a really difficult time with a client that really just made her life hell. And I listened to all of this and I said, just get rid of them. Because this is not about you. This is about them. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter who you involve. It doesn't matter how you change things. It's still going to be, it's you. So there's no reason to continue this. And although it took a long time to get rid of the client, or to make that, or to take that, it's easy to say get rid of somebody, but then to actually go and sever that relationship is a very different thing, and it's a very emotional thing. But once that happened, it was everything was just like immediately there was relief. Immediately there was a big monkey off their shoulder and all of that. And then the client go and bug the next person, because we're not in this. So if you believe in what you do, if you are consistent, if you know you're always putting your clients first, then don't deal with those things. And this is the thing that I sort of said right in the beginning, that I'm not in the game of convincing anybody. We sometimes get where somebody says to me, you know what, I'm not getting value from Propulsion. I'm like, okay, no, that's fine. But you can also see that they're not involved, right? So I'm not there to convince them, no, but remember we do this and we do that. I'm just like, fine, because they're not engaging. They're not doing their part. You can pay your membership fees for anything as much as you want, to the FPI, to the golf club, to the gym. If you don't go and if you don't participate, you're not getting value for your money, right? And I never want to be a business where we do that, and neither should you. So work with the people who see the value, work with the people who wants to work with you, And if there's somebody whose trust needs to be won, and show them that, look, we are different, but we don't tell you we're different. We show you that we're different. Then you're going to build a fantastic business, and you're going to work with people you love. You're going to work with people who love you, and you're going to do great work. We're going to change the world, and we are just going to be an amazing profession from that point. So something I maybe want to add here, maybe there's two people that jumped off as they think I'm finished. But one thing I forgot to say that I think is very important before I sort of added that bit at the end is that, just also remember that we're opening doors and we're walking a journey. So don't try and fix everything in one meeting. I just wanted to reiterate that. And also, your attitude and your energy in that meeting will also play a massive role. So I just wanted to add that as well. Anyway, so let me see. We've got time today. We're finishing a little bit early. So let me see if there's any kind of comments. Winston says, pushing for sales always leads to shortcuts and illegal dealings. Clients are also starved of relevant information just because the focus is not advice, but how many deals can be signed. Winston, I fully agree. I think, and look, let's say this, right? There are clients, that's what they want. Just give me the product. That's it. I don't want to engage in the whole thing. And that's fine. I think some of the things that David shared earlier in his segment was, have a service proposition for different kinds of people. But it is very important that, do what you say on the tin. If you say you're a financial planner, then do financial planning. If you have a client like that, then you're not a good fit for them. On the same hand, if you are a broker who focuses on just, products and getting the best product out there and sort of always looking at the best prices and those kinds of things, then that's your value proposition. And then you should only look after clients who's looking for that and let the other take care of the rest. And this is why there's still sort of place for everyone, I think. But often these things, and here's the thing that changed, right? That's very important to understand. I've said this so many times now, not necessarily on the show, but in meetings and things that I have, is that the journey has changed, right? So the end solution is very often still a financial product of some sort, an investment, a risk product, a short-term product, a medical aid, gap cover, whatever that solution is, because it plays a very specific role. That has not changed. But the way we get there and the experience that the client has to get there is very different. The expectations they have is very, very different to get to that point. So thanks for your comment there, Winston, as well. It's brilliant. Frank, no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. John C. Maxwell, thank you very much, Frank, definitely. And then Terence says reliability is so key. And then Frank was also just saying, so true, Terence, we must find a mutual fit between who we want to serve as clients, considering their attitude, aspirations, and affluence. Yes, fantastic. And then Arun ends off by saying very wise words and very relevant. Thank you very much. Righty, so with that, next week, we've got episode 300 coming up. I get goosebumps, I can't believe it. Our guest next week is Kobus Barnard from Avalon or Allegiance Consulting, depending on where you know him from. So he's going to be our guest for next week. I'm looking forward to that conversation. They are launching some new stuff. We're not just going to talk. We'll also mention that and talk a little bit about it. But I want to talk more around the CRM world. It's a conversation and questions I get so much about. So I'm looking forward to my conversation with him. I'm looking forward to celebrate 300 episodes with you. And yeah. And then we've got Global Financial Planning Conference next week, so can't wait for that as well. Hope to see some of you there in person, otherwise online. But on that note, ladies and gents, thank you so much for joining me. Have a fantastic weekend. Stay safe, be blessed and prosper. Stay curious and continue to raise the bar. Love you lots. Bye-bye. Thanks for joining us on Propulsion. If you found value in today's episode, then there's plenty more where this came from. You can find all our previous episodes right here on the podcast, as well as on our YouTube channel. And talking about the YouTube channel, we go live every single Friday at 8 a.m. until 9 a.m. and we host many different guests, and we also talk about very interesting topics. And on the live show, there's also some incredible segments hosted by some of the most well-known and influential financial planning professionals. So you are most welcome to join us every single Friday. Put it in your diary and we will see you there. And on that note, also please do check out propulsion.co.za/community for all of the goodness and learn more about how you can become part of our amazing community and how that would benefit you, your business and your career. So on that note, stay curious and keep raising the bar.